I spent about 5 hours up in Lincoln, Illinois, filming his, what, for lack of a better term, deathbed confession.
John F. Kennedy and Robert were read into the Majestic 12 program, and they talked to Marilyn about it in bed, I guess trying to impress her.
I've had a lot of people on my show that said that he was not born in America. He was born in Germany, and his father was German, and their last name was Scherf, and they changed it to Bush when they came to America.
Technically, it was not against the law to kill the president. Let that sink in. In 1963, it was a murder in Texas, and Dallas, Texas police had the jurisdiction to investigate and prosecute.
One of the things I want to get deeper into, and I know Jim Manning has a lot of this information, and it's been shared by Jimmy with us on a certain level, where he was involved with Ted Kennedy and the Chappaquiddick incident, and he talked about that, and he gave detail that no one else could know.
I don't know if you can see it, but on the bottom, on page 50, it talks about when the FBI kidnapped me and tortured me, and they admitted they failed to bring me to speak of any crime that I had been involved in.
When you talk about the things that prove it, one of the things that I believe is most important is that whenever the guy in the tower was talking to Mark Lane years ago, he said that he was in the tower and he heard a bang, and he also saw a big flash.
If I remember correctly, Jimmy led a 14-man team, and their target was members of the government in South Africa. And basically the entire cabinet was going to ride the blue train from one point to another. And they infiltrated the train as passengers. And when it left one stop and was headed to another stop, where there was some distance where they had a little more time, they began assassinating the members of the train. But there was an explosive charge that derailed the train, and it went over off the tracks down into a lower area, rolled off the tracks. And then the ambush continued, but virtually the entire cabinet of South Africa was murdered in that operation. Ted Kennedy he was basically tricked to bring Mary Jo Kopechne down to the Dyke Bridge. The CIA needed some way to control him. So he's basically became an accomplice to murder. But Mary Jo Kopechne was murdered. If you look on Wikipedia, it says right in there that the cause of death was suffocation, not drowning. After they killed Che, they drug him into the kitchen. Jimmy maybe tell the story when he comes on it. They cut Che's hand off. One was mailed to Fidel Castro, and the other one was mailed to CIA Langley headquarters. Who in the world would not believe Jimmy's story that he was part of the CIA assassination group? How in the hell can he? That's not photoshopped. I don't care who you are.
But here's George Scherf Jr., who would be George H.W. Bush, and here's his father, George Scherf, who eventually would be Prescott Bush. So Prescott Bush, as we know him, was born in Germany, served in the German Navy, and his son, George Scherf, was born in Germany as well. So obviously not eligible to be an American president, but he was.
This document that's in Jim Manning's book is the smoking gun that proves that the CIA killed John F. Kennedy.
They convinced Truman that what would happen is we'd lose Vietnam, for example, then Laos, then Cambodia, and so forth. And then the same thing in Central America. There are times when we will actually have to kill people. And that was called executive action. And they convinced him that he had to approve that, and he did. Well, that was the first part of the plan. The second part of the plan was...
And it's the same as when they took JFK down. They're controlling governments around the world. The Scherf family, Nazi family, eventually would get to the point where he's the head of the CIA, George H.W. Bush, and then the president of the United States. So this is obviously a compromise of our country on a massive level.
Most of it is in the book Primary Target, and my wife wrote the book, and if it hadn't been for her, that book would have never been published, because she wanted it out there. She felt the people should know certain aspects of the truth. This driver went in to get coffee for him, and somebody walked up alongside the car. Jimmy rolled the back window down because he was sitting in the back seat, and he was shot and executed. And a blanket was thrown over him in the back seat. Jimmy Hoffa wasn't buried. Jimmy Hoffa was incinerated. And it was just like Tony Accardo's home. When they pulled the jewel heist over on Michigan Avenue, the guy they robbed was a friend of Tony Accardo's. Tony Accardo grew up in the 42 gang. He was also a gunman for Al Capone. So Tony Accardo in his own right was a stone cold killer. Assassination.
Patriotism Unhinged. And I'll tell you, I think it ought to be the biggest bestseller in New York Times history.